The New Britain Board of Education, providing students with a high-quality education.
Good evening. I'd like to call this New Britain Board of Education meeting to order at 6:14. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Actually, start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Sanders, no, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Kristen, can you call the roll?
Mr. Merrill Gay.
Here.
Mr. Nicholas Murcia.
Here.
Dr. Violet Jimenez Sims.
Here.
Ms. Monica Dawkins.
Here.
Mr. Anthony Kane.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Listro.
Here.
Ms. Annie Parker.
Here.
Ms. Diana Reyes. Here. Ms. Nancy Rodriguez. Ms. Gail Sanders Connolly.
Here.
Okay. And now if we could do a moment of meditation and keep in our minds the Eason and Rose families. Okay. And now we have a recognition of a New Britain High School alumnus. Tonight we are proud to recognize Kevin Sliz, a graduate of New Britain High, for his recent heroic actions. Kevin graduated from New Britain High in 2019 and currently works for the New Britain Parks and Recs Department while attending the University of Connecticut. On November 10th, Kevin performed CPR on another Parks and Rec coach who suffered a cardiac emergency during the after-school program at Lincoln Elementary School. Kevin continued these life-saving measures until paramedics arrived and the afflicted staff member was transported to the hospital. His valuable CPR training had been provided by a Parks and Rec after-school supervisor. Thankfully, this individual is alive due to Kevin's bravery and quick thinking. We are also grateful for the care that the other Parks and Rec staffers took that day to keep our students safe, protected, and informed. In order to honor and recognize Kevin for his extraordinary actions, the Board of Education would like to present him with a $500 scholarship towards his studies at the University of Connecticut, where he's currently pursuing a degree in Sports and Fitness Administration and Management. Thank you, Kevin, for your continued commitment to the well-being of the students of New Britain and your fellow man.
Kevin, can you turn your camera on for a minute?
Might also have to speak often.
Kevin, can you hear us? We saw the K earlier. Oh, there you are. Can you take your bubble away, Kevin? Can we see you for just a second? Or would you rather stay bubbled? Kevin, I don't know, did you hear Mr. Gay?
I don't exactly know what that means.
Kevin, I don't know, did you hear Mr.
I
Gay?
don't exactly know what that means. I can't really hear anything.
Oh,
Yep.
does that have a good
Can I have
connection?
know what the clock on?
We've got an echo going.
We're on a delay. Some sort of delay. There's just lag. And now it's feedbacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Maybe he'll come back on.
There he is.
Ah, he's trying again. Can you hear us better, Kevin?
I can actually hear now.
Oh, I can
Yeah,
hear you
okay.
too. Would you mind reading it again?
Through like the live stream link, I couldn't hear anybody in here.
Okay, so I'm gonna have Mr. Gay reread what he read a few minutes earlier, okay?
Okay.
Loud.
Tonight, we proudly recognize Kevin Sliz, a graduate of New Britain High School, for his recent heroic actions. Kevin graduated from New Britain High School in 2019 and currently works for the New Britain Parks and Recs Department while attending the University of Connecticut. On November 10th, Kevin performed CPR on another Parks and Rec coach who had suffered a cardiac emergency during the after-school program at Lincoln Elementary School. Kevin continued these life-saving measures until paramedics arrived and the afflicted staff member was transported to the hospital. His valuable CPR training had been provided by a Parks and Rec after-school program supervisor. Thankfully, this individual is alive and due to Kevin's bravery and quick thinking. We are also grateful for the care that the other Parks and Rec staffers took that day to keep our students safe, protected, and informed. In order to honor and recognize Kevin for his extraordinary actions, the New Britain Board of Education would like to present him with a $500 scholarship towards his studies at the University of Connecticut, where he is currently pursuing a degree in sports and fitness administration and management. Thank you, Kevin, for your continued commitment to the well-being of the students of New Britain and your fellow man.
Do you want to say a couple of words?
I don't really have anything planned, but I'm just thankful for the $500 scholarship, of course, but I'm just thankful that my friend Patrick is still here with us and he's getting better day by day, so that's what really matters.
Thanks for coming on tonight, Kevin. Say hi to your mom and dad for us too. Parks and Rec really did a beautiful drive. We all drove by. We went to the house. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, right, Kev?
Yes.
It was a day off.
Right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right, exactly. So anyway, but we can't thank you enough. We're super proud of you for everything you're doing now and just for being who you are. And I think Mr. Kane will be mailing that out to you. Correct, Mr. Kane?
We'll find out. Yeah.
Okay. You can expect a check in the mail. All right? All right, hon.
Thank you.
Thank
I just
you.
want to say hi to Miss Sanford.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
I hope you guys have a great meeting, and thank you guys for all you guys do for this city as well, for the kids in Brant.
Thanks, hon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is public participation. Do we have some people on the phone?
Yep.
Who do we have?
First one's an area code 203, ends in 41.
Okay, so we have a little bit of uncertainty as to who people are here, but let me go through and you can tell me whether you're on for public participation or if you're one of the administrators who's called in. So the person who's got the phone number that's area code 203 that ends in 41, you can unmute yourself by hitting *6 and just tell us who you are and what you'd like to say.
Hey, Chairman Gay, this is John Boyd. Hope you and the members of the board are doing okay this evening.
Okay, did you want to speak during public participation?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Gay, members of the board. I'm here to speak this evening on item 3A in supporting students who are deaf or hard of hearing. I know Ms. Clark and Ms. Sima are going to be probably presenting some information to you guys regarding things that the actions that the board can take to try to assist students who are deaf or hard of hearing. As members of the board are aware, last year, November, actually almost a year ago, over a year ago, November 18, 2019, I approached the board with the concept of adopting American Sign Language as one of the official languages taught throughout our district. I won't belabor the point with the rest of the board. You can go and read my previous testimony, and I'll send it out to the chairman to circulate amongst board members. But I do think that hopefully some of the actions that can be taken is to approve ASL as a foreign language alternative, and I am going to be working with members of the Education Committee on a statewide level in the coming General Assembly session to try to make this a reality statewide. And members of the board know how to reach me if they have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this proposal. Once again, thank you, Chairman Gay and Superintendent Sarah, for your attention on this issue. And once again, thank you, Nancy, for all the hard work you do in our school district. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Our next speaker, or the next phone number that we're going to is 860, and then it ends in 25. So if you can hit *6 to unmute yourself. And
Hi, good evening.
hi.
Hi, my name is Perla Vanessa Cardoso. I'm just calling from like the community. I just have a few things that I want to mention, if that's okay.
Could you start off by saying your name again and where you live? And then.
Yeah, I live in New Britain. My name is Perla Vanessa Cardoso. I live in 136 Main Street here in New Britain.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Okay, yes. So, hi, good evening. Like I said, my name is Perla. I'm a former student from class of 2012 here in New Britain High. I'm currently a community organizer with Connecticut Students for a Dream. It's a youth-led organization that fights for the rights of undocumented youth and their families here in New Britain. So I just wanted to share a few things that have come to light in last week. As someone who has worked with undocumented Spanish-speaking and other different communities, people of color, as being undocumented, I want to share a little bit. Well, at least I know it's not on the agenda tonight, but as a community member, I think it's important to mention it. So as you know, Luis Delgado, a staff member at New Britain High, was suspended last week, right? And I think that should be really talked about, and I think it should be in the agenda. And if not tonight, I think soon, because that should be talked about. And so, like, again, someone that has worked with Spanish-speaking students in New Britain, right? So it has come to light, and he has shared his story about an email that he sent out to the superintendent. And he got suspended for it, which I think is very confusing, since it was valid, right? For me, from my perspective, as a Latina, as a student, a first-generation student, that my parents had to go to TPT and there was no translator, I think it's very important to actually talk about that. And like I said, again, especially with now the new undocumented students at New Britain High, with non-English speaking students. I just think that we should be talking about this more. It should be in the next agenda, and we should be talking about it more, since 90% of our students are people of color, right? Are Latinx, they're Latinx students. So here are a few demands that I think my community, and at least for undocumented and Spanish-speaking students, deserve, or I think it's fair. And I don't think Mr. Delgado should have gotten suspended, but these are some of the demands that I think that it's valid for our community, right? So to create 2 new assistant superintendent positions, with one who is non-white Latinx, Spanish speaker, and one who is black. 2, hire a Spanish-speaking assistant to Sandra Stanford, Director of Community Engagement. 3, hire 2 full-time Spanish-speaking interpreters and 1 full-time Arabic-speaking interpreter for New Britain High School. 4, create and support of a safe space for people of color to communicate without fear of backlash or reprisal. The Black and brown staff need a space where they can process all the all the racial aggressions that take place each and every day. Just keep in mind that the longer you have been as a district employee, the longer that you've been traumatized in Britain High or in the Britain district. 5, expunge any disciplinary reports in Mr. Delgado's personnel file related to his advocacy for New Britain students and teachers of color. After reading the emails between Mr. Delgado and district administrators, we believe he behaved in an honest and professional manner. We also feel that the Britain School District is not internally addressing privilege and white fragility and an ongoing issue for both students and staff of color. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Let me move on to the next person. We have 860 and it ends in 30. You can hit *6 and unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Arisa Ponte and I'm a parent of one of our students in the district.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening and just wanted to touch base really quickly on an incident that both of my sons were attending Brighton High at the time, they unfortunately went through. We had a incident with one teacher who did not assign assignments during the pandemic for 6 weeks, which caused him to fail. And I made the determination to change schools for him so that he could start fresh this year at a new school. And then this year, over the summer, I found out that my oldest was also failing a class that I know he put his most effort into. And once I brought it up to the teacher and administration at New Britain High School, I was given the runaround for 6 months. And I think that that's something that unfortunately is a pressing matter that needs to be addressed with someone besides the superintendent, because we have tried to evaluate all possibilities without my son having to take a full-blown assessment when he, unfortunately, according to teachers, is shy 10% of the 75% that was required in order to obtain the half a credit. And I just wanted to see who could point me in the right direction as to whom I would be able to speak to, because there is a lot of information, there's a lot of documentation. I reached out to the help desk because the superintendent said that this was a technical issue when my son's Google Classroom information it disappeared according to the words that were used, and it would take months to obtain. I called the help desk and got information in a day. And the school refuses to review the information. They just want my son to take an assessment, which I don't think is fair during a pandemic. This is ridiculous, honestly. This is his senior year. He did all the requirements accepted. I had on, October 2nd, Mr. Pierce sent me an email saying that my son would have a modified assessment to make sure he understood the concept of the geometry course. According to Khan Academy, which is the program that the students were using, he mastered the unit exam, which was given on May 18th. That was the last unit exam that was given to the students. The final quiz was given June 5th. And it's my understanding that the mastery unit test is more than just a quiz. On April 15th, Pierce also sent the students an email stating that the teacher was supposed to be recording grades on College School, and they were going to submit those grades of 4th quarter into the 3rd quarter and combine them so that the children were able to pass because of the pandemic and the unprecedented incidences that we were all facing. And my son, unfortunately, did not get that, because if you look up his Power School, according to the school, his information is deleted, things aren't graded, and my son, unfortunately, had to change schools because the assistant superintendent suggested he change schools. Thank you.
Could you just repeat your name? The board secretary missed it.
I'm sorry?
The board secretary asked that I have you repeat your name because we didn't catch it.
Sure. My name is Arelis, A-R-E-L-I-S, Aponte, A-P-O-N-C-E.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Do we have any other people who've signed up for public comment? I don't see any other. Anybody else see any better than I do? Glasses fogged up here?
No, there are no.
I don't see any other speakers. Okay. Do you have any suggestion on what we do?
We've talked extensively.
Okay,
We've talked extensively. At this point, I don't.
okay. All right, so we don't have anybody else participating in public participation, so the next item on the agenda is the election of Board of Education officers. So, how do we want to do this? Somebody want to make a nomination, I guess is the way to.
I was just gonna say, I think you have to start with nominations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just looked at the agenda and said, oh, yeah, that's on here.
I can pull it up, it's in the bylaws. So it's basically you nominate in order president, then you hold the election for president, then vice president, then secretary. So it starts with nominations. They can be made from the floor by any member of the board at the annual meeting. They do not require a second. Any member nominated may rise to decline the nomination. All nominations made in absentia are considered accepted. And then after nominations are closed, voting is by voice unless a written ballot is requested by a majority vote of the present members. In a case of a voice vote, the candidates shall be voted on in order nominated until one candidate receives a majority vote of the full membership.
So are we started?
Yep.
Okay, I nominate Merrill, president.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? I will close nominations to protect you there. Okay, so seeing that we have one nominee, Joy, all in favor?
What if we all say no? I think you have to accept it, though, right?
All right, and I think it said I could rise to decline, so.
It's assumed accepted unless you decline.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, so,
Congratulations.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Okay, so now the vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Violet.
She can't be vice chair,
Why?
because
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
My bad,
Yeah.
yep, you're right.
But thank you.
Yep, sorry.
You also.
I didn't get a chance to
Anyway, I'm like.
I didn't get a chance to talk to anybody. I forgot it was coming up.
Yeah, I didn't either.
That's right, I forgot of that silly little bylaw we
It is
have.
what it is. Because the.
I nominate Gail Sanders Town.
To
Oh,
be president and vice president.
okay.
So that it should be her.
I'll nominate Nick.
I know.
Arm wrestling this evening.
Yeah, I was gonna say pinky. Want pinky wrestle?
Okay, are there any other, so what's going on for new people is that our bylaws say that if the chair is of one committee, one party, the vice chair has to be of the other party. So we have 3 Republicans in here, although it does say we could nominate somebody in abstention. Force
We
them to do it.
I was gonna say Nancy's not here. We can.
Okay, so-
So we have 2 nominations. Is there anybody else who wants to make a nomination?
Can you repeat the nominations?
The nominations are Nick and Gail. I did.
I guess we close it, right?
Okay, so I'll close the nominations. Do either of you want to decline the nomination or say something in favor of your candidacy?
I don't know what you're looking at me for, Gail.
30-second campaign spiel, let's hear
She's
it.
I
just
know,
staring you
I don't
down.
have, I don't have a, there's no speeches here.
No,
None, I know,
could be.
Okay,
we just go.
so,
I don't like this.
you don't like this,
No,
okay.
no,
I don't.
If you prefer to vote by paper, you can. It just requires a majority of the people here to say it if you don't want to vote openly.
I don't mind voting openly.
I know, it's just responding to her
I know.
concern.
Yeah, it's not that as much as actually voting. So question, can there be vice
Can you be what?
chairs? Can you have two people, like co? Can you
Not-
share a position?
Not according to the,
Not under our current bylaws.
Really? It says you can't, or it just doesn't say you can?
always the rule bender.
It is what it is. I've been in other organizations where people share a leadership role, so I just,
Yeah.
and we use Robert's rules, so I know that. Obviously,
You-
our own
you-
bylaws are different than somebody else's, so that's why I asked the question, but.
At some point, the bylaws could be amended to allow for such things. But it says that in the case, you vote until one candidate receives the majority.
Oh, jeez.
So rock, paper, scissors would be a lot more fun.
No, I know,
You need to
I know.
vote. So, do we want to do this as a voice vote?
I know, I don't know what I'm gonna try to say either. Right,
Can I motion for a brief recess?
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Needs a second.
No, no,
Okay.
no,
So is there a second for a
Second.
brief recess?
Yes, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I know, right?
We are back in session. Is there any news that the two candidates want to pass on to us here?
Yeah, there is news. As much as I am humbled by your nomination, I'm going to respectfully decline. Nick, I've been on, this is my second term, still have another 3 years. Nick, this is his last year of his third term?
Second.
Second term. So, if he decides not to run for reelection, I'd like him to go out and officer.
Thank you.
Nice speech.
Okay. So we have one candidate for vice chair, and I'd like to move to approve him by acclamation.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
all right. And now we move on to board secretary. Do we have a nomination for board secretary? Diana, you want to make a nomination?
I nominate Byron Henderson for secretary.
Okay.
What
Do
if I
we-
nominate you back?
I'll decline.
Okay, are there any other nominations?
I'd nominate Gail Sanders Connolly. So there.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Oh.
You can decline. You
Oh,
can-
no, because I thought it had to be, so it's just president and vice president that have to be
Right.
flopped like,
Yeah, and the
oh,
last
I
one's-
gotcha, I gotcha.
Joker's wild.
Oh, that makes me feel great about this position.
Yeah.
What should I perform next?
What's next, Jean? All
Okay,
right.
so. We have a nomination, or are you accepting the
Yeah.
nomination?
Can't decline two in one day.
Okay. All right, are there any other nominations? Are we doing this as a public vote? I will, unless somebody asks for a paper ballot, we do it by a public vote. So, go by order of nominations, all in favor of Violet? Say, no, I guess raise your hands, it's easier to count that way. Okay. All right, and all in favor of Gail Conley Sanders?
You didn't vote for yourself? I was gonna vote for you.
May, did you vote for yourself, Dr.
I did
Sim?
not vote for myself. I'm just gonna sit here.
There's technically no election. No one wins because
I hope it
you
doesn't
need a
speak to
majority
my
of the full
quality. It's
membership.
just a week.
And you only have 5.
Majority of the full member?
Full membership.
Okay.
So
Val, you have to vote. Reopen the nominations and re-vote. All in favor of Dr. Sims, raise your hand.
I was gonna say, you have to vote for yourself.
Okay. And all in favor of Gail Conley Sanders. Okay. It is a 6-3 vote. Dr. Sims is our secretary. Okay. And I will be reappointing committee chairs shortly, but not this instant. And, okay, so now that we got that out of the way, I'll turn my computer back on and see the agenda.
appointment of committee chairs.
Is that
One more
really?
thing, right?
I know.
Appointment of committee chairs.
I told you.
Wait, what happened?
It says appointment of committee
Okay,
chairs.
so,
He's like, I'm gonna take a break and go to something lighter.
I would like to appoint Gail Sanders Conley as the chair of the Finance Committee. Dr. Sims is chair of Curriculum. Annie Parker as chair of Personnel. And,
Policy or bylaw.
okay, so vice president is the policies by the bylaw, and then also I'd like to appoint Joey to chair the wellness committee. So we need to vote on that?
Nope.
Nope, okay, those appointments are now official. Wow, such power.
It's one
Okay.
of the few things you get to do
I
by
would-
fiat.
Exactly, yeah. All right, so let's move on to the superintendent's report.
Mine's a lot more boring. No, I actually, I'm gonna start with, you have a very long superintendent report, I will say that. And I wanna begin with saying that, all feedback is always an opportunity to look at what we're doing, where we've been, where we're going. So I don't shy away from feedback, I don't. But I also have to temper it with, well, what have we done to date? And this was a good opportunity, middle of week, to talk to my cabinet about what are the steps we have tangibly taken to creating a district where we increase the competency of all of our staff culturally and linguistically. And so what you have there is 14 pages that I'm not going to read to you, but it is in public record. No, I won't. But I will take the counsel of one of our board members to just do a shout out quickly. That's not always my strength, right? Saying all of the good work that we do. I had a conversation just before coming here saying, we need to broadcast this more, and I laid it on my communication manager, so I'm going to stand by it's his fault. But we're going to do a better job at telling the public what it is we are working on. It's been a lot of infrastructure work over the last few years, setting up a system, and I'll just very briefly go back to my early years here, involving all of the community stakeholders at the table to discuss what our biggest areas of concern were. That was back in 2016 when I started. And I find myself now, we're coming on 2021, so the 5-year plan that we laid out in 2016 is coming to its term. I've recently met with a consultant who's going to help me, again, facilitate those conversations around what will the next 5 years look like, building on the work we're already doing. So those conversations will be had. We'll be setting up focus groups. You will be invited as well as our community members and our partners. I will say I'm very proud of initially hitting the ground running. We talked about the wellness of all our children here in the city of New Britain. And the one thing that we started on right away in year one was providing many more supports for our students around social and emotional wellness, including our partnerships with Community Health Center, where we only had 2 health clinics at the time, comprehensive health clinics, and that's just because our physical structures just can't handle it. But what we could handle was making sure that there were licensed social workers that are not Board of Ed employees, but work for either Community Health Center, Klingberg we partner with as well. And so we have really built a solid base of counseling services, not only for our students, but for the families as well, even if the building doesn't have a comprehensive medical center. We came, and another big thing for me, and this took an entire year, was to shift our current district scheduling and staffing to support enrichment for all students via STEAM education. One thing that we did notice when we first came on, it was apparent that our students didn't have entry into a gifted and talented like program. Our subgroups in particular, our special education students and our students, our EL students, our English language learners. And so we said, how can we not only build the competency of all staff around being culturally and linguistically responsive, but also ensure that every child in New Britain, kindergarten through grade 8 to start, had access to enrichment, hands-on, minds-on learning. And that was really the creation of STEAM. And it's in line with our vision for the district of pursuing excellence for every student. And the one thing I want to say, in every department, every one of my departments within my cabinet has been working within the 5-year plan toward equitable practices for all students. What I've learned in 5 years is I tend to be an impatient person and a bulldog of sorts because I want to get the work done. But changing minds and hearts of people is a lot harder than changing an infrastructure. And so the work will never be done. We will keep progressing and moving. One really proud moment that I'm going to give credit to our talent department, and actually Dr. Tucker, who was here, but now Ms. Manning has taken the helm in that department. Our current demographics in New Britain are just under 70% for Latinx students, 15% for Black, and 15% other. For our administrators, as of October 2019, we had about 15% that were Black or African American leaders. We had the same number for Hispanic leaders, 14.55 or 15%. And we had almost 71% of our leaders, building administrators or leaders, were white. 1 year later, for our new hires, we doubled our numbers from almost 15% to actually more, to 33%. That's not 15%, that's 15 percentage points that we jumped, right? So I want to be clear, percent and percentage points, big difference.
And you're talking about the new hires, not
Correct.
the whole, yeah.
Correct, new hires. And the same for our Hispanic population. So our numbers have grown in terms of administrators, and they have as well for teachers. We will be putting this data, I assure you, on our website just to show our journey to create an environment where our students see themselves, but also have quality, people who care, and families who feel like they're welcome to come in. That's never, ever, that's always been our vision and our mission here in the district since I started. I want to say our journey around equity began 4 years ago when we started in Atlanta, Georgia. And you can see just from the pages that I presented to you in terms of talent development, the work we're doing. the curriculum that we started 2 years ago. And while I feel the frustration of others that the journey is slow, we want to be sure that we are being thorough. And the curriculum that we are now starting to write and roll out, is with equity partners that are looking at the work to ensure that we have culturally and linguistically relevant materials for our students and adequate, I want to say more than adequate, we have very good professional learning for our teachers. We're able to have that professional learning for all of our teachers because of the structures we set in place with STEAM. And for some of you who weren't here a few years back, our problem was this. We had no additional money. We were trying to create a system where all students would have hands and minds on learning via enrichment through STEAM, have no half days on Wednesdays because it was a hardship. The parents were coming and saying it's a hardship to find childcare. And to provide ongoing professional development for teachers because we knew the work we had was big. And we did all of that. It took us an entire year to build a structure that would support K-8 enrichment, professional learning for every teacher every week, no more half days for parents except on conference days twice a year. And from that point of building that structure, we have been moving slowly toward increasing capacity of our existing staff around engaging all students, not some, with a very overt attention paid to our subgroups around special education and our English language learners. That continues today. Any questions on this? Because I really don't want to read it to you, but I want you to read it. It's a great read. And for the newer members, any questions you have, I am always available. I really am. Text me, ask me questions. I will always be willing to answer. And you may get a longer answer than you want because I tend to be long-winded. I am passionate about the work I do here in New Britain for our New Britain families and students. And I have to just give a shout out too to Whitson's, who, thank you Joey, who's now heading up the wellness committee with us. I think we have a solid plan this year around improving the quality of food for our students. Maybe not the quantity, but the quality for sure. And I just have to say that Whitson's has been by my side really the whole 4 years. But when the pandemic hit, it was me and the manager of Whitson's talking daily about how do we spread the food across our city. Thousands every week for students. And they have been delivering food since March. And we have the feeding sites, and I did forward you emails, and I don't always say it publicly, but I have to say, we have worked very hard, and we are working on no beef jerky and sunflower seeds. We really are, because I listen to my high school students who can't take much more than that. So anyway, but and I'm excited about working with Joe Listro on this too. You just bring an expertise. I think that is going to really lift it up. So I'm excited about that work this year too. And that's about it for tonight. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to committee reports. You have a personnel committee report, Karen?
Yeah. So personnel, we only have 2 items. One under consent and one under new business, which is 2 job descriptions and 2 people to be hired.
Okay. And policy?
Policy, we do have an item on the agenda tonight around curriculum development, and it actually ties in partially to what some of the callers were speaking in about around a good bit of our meeting when we looked and reviewed this was how do we align our curriculum development policy with the work that we've actually been doing on trying to make sure that our curriculum is culturally relevant and responsive and linguistically relevant and responsive to our students. The other thing that we added to the policy that you'll see when we bring it up is we added guidelines to help the administration understand what the procedure is for getting new courses added and making sure that we have a continual review of our curriculum through that committee. So that's coming up. And I was speaking with the board secretary, the board clerk about, at an upcoming policy meeting, taking a look at, we've been doing a lot more with our committees, and I think our committees have been driving a lot of our board business much more effectively and efficiently in these past couple of years, and sort of taking some feedback from Ms. Conley and others to try to figure out exactly what items that come for our board agendas should be going to what committees, so that 2 or 3 committees are not necessarily looking at the same thing. So when should something come to curriculum as opposed to policy? When does it have to go to personnel as opposed to finance? All of those things, just to sort of, make it so that we don't have redundancies except when it's really needed. So that's something that we'll be addressing at a future meeting. So if any board members have feedback on that, on how we can make those committee meetings better uses of our time, please let me know.
Okay. And the Finance Committee?
So, to Nick's point, in the last Finance Committee, we had several academic and curriculum, and, I always ask, did it go through curriculum? And if it did, it would behoove us not to approve the funds to approve the curriculum. So you'll see a lot of that. I'll let Violet talk about the curriculum items, operations, some cool stuff for the gardens. Like when they're ready, we're gonna do like the picnic tables. I think later on, they're gonna do the renovations of the garden. I think that's like super cool, get the kids outside. I'd love to see them start, planting those gardens again. What else? Our sanitizing, my favorite, buying some more sanitization stuff for the schools, that's always good stuff. But that's about it.
Okay. Dr. Sims?
We have quite a few items on consent, but we met as a committee and mainly had a presentation about K-3 reading assessment, because we have to balance state requirements and then also kind of trying to find the best assessments that fit with our students' needs and the curriculum that we're trying to implement. So you will see some things here related to the assessments, as well as just some other items related to curriculum, like extending licenses for programs that, due to the pandemic, teachers started using, like Padlet or things like that, and that are going well. Teachers are asking to keep, and so we're extending and getting those contracts.
Okay. And anything from wellness?
The superintendent summarized a little bit of what we were addressing, but we're looking at reimagining our school meals for next school year, and some ideas in consultation with a nutrition consultant is to involve parents and students in actually trying and sampling some of the meal suggestions Witten's going to put forward for next year, including getting their feedback on which ones they like and which ones to include in next year's school menu. And our next meeting is in January.
Okay, great. Okay, and board reports.
I just want to take a moment and say that I appreciate those people who are calling in and advocating. We definitely, as a board, welcome feedback. You can always reach out to the full board. Members of the public can reach out to the full board by emailing boe@csdnb.org, and that will distribute your email to the full board. And it's useful sometimes to reach out, just because there often is misunderstandings of what is the purview of the board and what is not, especially when it comes with regard to employees, that there are processes in place for personnel matters, and until it rises to the board's level through the grievance process or other actions, it's really not our purview. But again, I'm always for people to be advocates, but as a board member, as an elected official, I really would, appreciate if people have concerns, reach out to board members. It may not be that we always have the answer you want, but at least we can provide you with some of the context and information around sort of what is the board's function, what isn't the board's function, what is left to a building level or the superintendent level, and what is something that we can, take action on.
Okay. Any other board reports? Okay. Let's move on to our presentation. We do have an attorney at some point.
That's under new business.
Okay.
I was gonna say, is he here though?
No.
He will.
Like you'll call him, he's not
Yeah.
sitting on,
Right.
okay.
Okay, so let's move into our presentation on supporting students who are deaf or hard of hearing.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I am Donna Clark, Pupil Services Supervisor, and I'm here tonight to present with Dr. Kelly Sima, who's our Teacher of the Deaf from Multimodal Teacher of the Deaf Services. I do have a presentation, a slideshow that I'll present. Give me just a moment. Hope you all can see it. Let me do this. Here we go. So again, thank you for having us. I'm here tonight with Kelly. We're going to showcase some plans that we have to support our particular population of students, those who are deaf or hard of hearing. Kelly's been with us for a few years now, and we've been working very collaboratively, district-wide, with our students who are deaf or hard of hearing. This past year, we were able to bring, sorry about that. This past year, we were able to bring 4 students back from outplacement. And in order to bring them back from outplacement, we've been working hard on talking about how we can better program for students while they're here in the district. And so I want to start just first by talking about this population of students so we have an understanding of who they are and what their needs are before I go into exactly what our plans are and our vision for the future. So talking about general definitions, students that are deaf or hard of hearing. Deaf are those with profound hearing loss who cannot understand sounds with or without hearing aids. Students who are hard of hearing are those with hearing losses that impair their understanding of sounds, including communication. So when we talk about the deaf community, there's the term deaf culture that's used. If you use deaf with a lowercase d, that refers to the audiological diagnosis of not hearing. Deaf with an uppercase D refers to a group of people who share a language and a culture. Part of this culture includes the history of deafness in America, deaf identity, and participation in the deaf community. A large part of this is having role models and others to learn from. Family choice is important when you're talking about deaf culture. Not all parents choose to participate in the community. However, it's important to note that the provision of deaf, hard of hearing peer support is crucial to a child's self-concept and identity as a person who is hearing loss. In regard to deaf culture, fewer than 10% of deaf and hard of hearing children are born to parents who are also deaf, and most individuals do not join the deaf community at birth. Often families do not choose to participate in the deaf community because they may prefer listening and spoken language as their child's mode of communication. However, it is important to note that these children also need a community of peers with hearing loss, particularly when it comes to their identity, understanding their disability, and developing self-advocacy and independence skills. Most students in middle school and high school do not want to utilize their hearing equipment because they are the only deaf or hard of hearing student in their class. It makes them feel different and ostracized. As a result, their access to instruction and the curriculum are impacted. Having peers with hearing loss reduces that aspect of social isolation while simultaneously empowering them to utilize their accommodations they require to learn. In terms of the impact of hearing loss on development, these students have a delay in expressive and receptive language acquisition. Their language deficit causes learning problems that result in reduced academic achievement. It impacts phonics and reading development, writing skills, listening comprehension. Communication difficulties often lead to social isolation and poor self-concept. Limited self-advocacy and independence is also a concern. I'm going to have Kelly talk now a little bit about the Deaf Child Bill of Rights.
Thank you, Donna. Hello, everybody. Good evening. In 2012, the Connecticut State Legislature passed the Deaf Child Bill of Rights to require districts to develop language and communication plans for students with hearing loss. The intent of the language and communication plan is to guide a meaningful discussion during a 504 meeting or a PPT meeting, and considering the child's hearing loss when developing that child plan. So aspects that guide the discussion center around the child's communication mode, accessibility of instruction and services, and the qualifications of the professionals providing services to the child. In 2019, we added another portion to the language and communication plan, and this portion is the emergency plan. And this adds the idea of considering procedures for alerting deaf and hard of hearing students to an emergency situation, and coming up with a process to inform staff who will be implementing the plan, who work with the student that they're speaking of.
So the speech and language pathologists that work in the district also are involved heavily with students who are deaf and hard of hearing. And Kelly has been instrumental as a teacher of the deaf in working with the speech and language pathologists at PPTs to develop this language and communication plan to ensure that we have one for each student in each building. I want to just give you an idea district-wide of where the students are who are deaf or hard of hearing. There's about approximately 56 students. I have them in this chart here by school or program and the number of students that are at each site. We do have 3 students that are out in the correct Hartford magnet schools that Kelly is also responsible for servicing. In terms of personnel supports, Kelly is with us for multimodal teacher of the deaf services. She works full-time servicing the students that I just previously listed on the slide there. And she has 3 teacher of the deaf teachers that work part-time with her as well. I will tell you, it's hard to find these teachers. There is a shortage, and Kelly's been, able, I think, Kelly, are these 3 individuals retired teachers?
Yes, they are. They're retired and they came back to help support the students in New Britain.
So in terms of supporting the students, I came to the board previously at the last meeting talking about paraeducator positions. We're trying to be as creative as we can with different professionals, different personnel supports to be able to service the students. And so we have the teachers of the deaf. We also have, I'm just jumping down to district staff, the 4 new paraeducator positions. These paraeducators are specifically working with the teachers of the deaf to help support these students. We also have speech and language pathologists, who are involved in communication, that are intimately involved in the servicing with students as well. In addition to that, another important player is Dr. Diana Gonzalez. CT Ears is her company that we contract with for our audiology services. Diana provides all of the equipment, the FM systems for our students throughout the district, as well as the magnet schools. She provides them. She also monitors the usage, any repairs that need to be done. And then she has working for her 2 individuals, another audiologist, Jessica Vanderfeen. And Jessica has a specialty in oral habilitation. We have a number of students in their IEP that, in addition to speech and language services, services from the teacher of the deaf, they also receive these oral habilitation services to help them with their specific needs that they have due to their disability. And just recently, within the past month, we were very fortunate to bring on Catherine Sullivan, who is a speech and language pathologist that works under Dr. Gonzalez. We do have, as you know, speech and language pathologists in all of our buildings, multiple practitioners in buildings working with students, but this is a very special population. And Catherine has a specialty working with deaf and hard of hearing students. And so we have her working with the students that I was telling you about that we had brought back from outplacement. We have provided programs at both Jefferson and DiLoretto, where we have students, 3 students are kindergartners, and we have 1 student at the high school that was brought back. But the 3 students who are kindergartners are at Jefferson and DiLoretto. We have them split up at two schools because of the different ways in terms of the students are instructed. Kelly, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the difference between the interventions at the 2 schools?
Sure, Donna. We have students in 2 locations right now. One group of students receives instruction with spoken language through listening and spoken language, and they also have sign language support. The other group of students is basically instructed through listening and spoken language solely. So they are a little bit different, but they both have peer groups, which is fantastic. And we have paraprofessionals and teachers and the speech and language pathologists who all specialize in working with these children based on their mode of communication.
So in terms of next steps and talking about what we have planned for these students, the little history that we just reviewed, and I think it was important in understanding how important it is for deaf and hard of hearing students to be surrounded with students that are like them in terms of their hearing disability. We find it a little difficult when students are sporadically placed at different elementary schools. So our goal is really to have a program where we can have these students housed in one building. This program is not a self-contained program where the students would, be in a classroom without typical peers. Although they need to have students around them, they have similar disabilities. We also want them to be mainstreamed and have typical peers and be part of the general education. So the plan with the Chamberlain renovation project is to develop a district-wide program for students that grades K through 5 that would attend Chamberlain for their elementary years. And from this will promote that peer engagement that we're talking about, allowing students to have peers that have similar disabilities to them with them in their classes. And it's also going to be efficient utilization of resources to support these students. As I mentioned, we have there's a shortage of teachers of the deaf, and to have just a few people that are running around the district doesn't leave a lot of time for services. If we have these students in one building, we could have much more meaningful services, more efficient service delivery. The exciting thing about Chamberlain is that they're in the midst of or starting a renovation. That renovation, what we'll be able to do is to incorporate universal design and embed it into the building plans. There are, we've had some, initial meetings speaking about the different types of accommodations that we can put into the building. And I use the term universal design because a lot of these things that we're going to be implementing For example, the sound absorption walls, panels in the walls, in the ceilings. A lot of these things that we're going to provide can also benefit other students that, whether they have disabilities or don't have disabilities. Kelly and I were just talking the other day about students that were visually impaired. And a lot of the needs of students who are hearing impaired, a lot of the accommodations or designs or supports that will put place in the building would actually benefit them as well. It will have services will be centralized in this one building. In terms of audiology, have the ability, we're talking about putting an auditory testing booth in there. Presently, students need to have their hearing tested, and their parents typically take them into Hartford, maybe CCMC or to some audiologist place where they would be able to be tested. There's a large number of students whose parents just can't get them there. If we had a testing booth on site, that would be quite beneficial. And Kelly, I thought maybe you could talk just a little bit about that, knowing that there's a couple other districts that have something similar, but not many, correct?
That's correct. We know of at least 2, possibly 3 districts that have testing booths in one of their schools to provide the testing for students, because for the exact reason that you said, parents have difficulty getting their children to the audiologist during the day. And it's such an important measure to understand how much a child is hearing really does impact their education so much. So it's a really important test that they should have regularly.
And then just in terms of opportunities for enhancing the greater, school community here in New Britain, I put down, student mentoring. We talk about, and actually, Kelly, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit, because I know the 2 things here, student mentoring and the ASL class at New Britain High School, are definitely 2 things that are near and dear to your heart, and I can touch on the family engagement piece afterwards.
Sure, absolutely. For children who are deaf and hard of hearing, having the opportunity to see and work with other students who are older than them, and even having adult mentors who are deaf or hard of hearing is really critical to their development. Just knowing that there are other people out there like them experiencing what they're experiencing. The hearing loss is a disability that is a low incidence disability. So a lot of children have never seen other kids wear hearing aids or cochlear implants. And just getting the kids together to either read stories with older kids or have the opportunity to have discussions about difficulties that they've faced, and understanding the similarities, even in age, if you have younger elementary with older elementary, or high school students coming down to the elementary level or preschool level. It's wonderful to see the kids spending time with each other and really building that community, because it's so vital. The ASL class at New Britain High School that's been mentioned would be so wonderful for many reasons, not only to create a larger community for the children who use sign language to communicate, right? So when you have peers around you in your school who are also learning sign language, you're now opening up you're opening up life and your social opportunities and your social experiences to have more exchanges with additional people, and it's a wonderful thing. But it's also wonderful for the students who will have the opportunity to take ASL classes. Through the opportunity of taking a class like this, you're now starting to spark interest in new possible professionals in the future. So this may help our shortage of teachers of the deaf. We may suddenly find that more people are interested in teaching deaf and hard of hearing children. And we also need interpreters for the deaf, sign language interpreters, so badly. And so this doesn't only just help the community and the school, it helps the community and the state and the deaf community in Connecticut. So it really plays, there's so many levels. And one more thing, for students who may have difficulty learning spoken foreign languages, having the opportunity to access a foreign language through visual and kinesthetic means does really support visual learners. Some people really have difficulty learning other spoken languages, and it can be very hard for them. So providing students with other options for learning foreign languages is a great way to really, I'm not moving what I'm saying here, but just to provide more options to the student population.
And then lastly, I had mentioned the family engagement and support. Having, at one school, being able to have the students there, for support, it would also be helpful for families, I think, in terms of having a smaller community where they would be able to have a support group as well. And in terms of the auditory testing booth, I think that, I think it would be very beneficial for parents that were having difficulty to have the audiologist or have the speech and language pathologist that specializes in deaf and hard of hearing on site, and to have tools on site to be able to help these students, I think would be tremendous.
Okay.
So, with that, I'm sorry, having a little trouble with my script here. The last, I'd just like to know if anybody has any questions.
I do. It's Gail. At our last, I don't know if it was a finance meeting or board meeting, there was discussion that we were bringing deaf students back into the district.
Yep.
Yes.
Do we have the supports in place for them now? I mean, it sounded like we were short teachers and paras and everything, but we just brought students back.
No, we did. We brought, there were 4 students that we brought back. Let me get back. I'm trying to get off my screen. There are 4 students that we brought back, and 1 is at the high school. 3 are kindergartners. They're in regular education. We have Kelly and our present support staff teacher of the deaf teachers able to support these students. The 4 paraeducators that we just recently had approved. We were very fortunate that we had 2 paraeducators already working in the district that actually have some experience or background working with students that are deaf or hard of hearing. Kelly, does one of them sign?
Yes, actually, one of them signs fluently, and the other one has been learning sign language for a few years with me.
So we knew when we took these students back that we had the support to be able to provide for them. It was once we had them come back, we started to realize that that for if there's other students out there that we might be able to bring back, or even just enhancing the programming that we have for the students that are presently with us. Preschool, Kelly, I didn't see Relk on there, but we do have preschoolers, little ones coming up the pipe.
Yes, actually, some of them have already moved up and are at De Loretto.
Okay, all right. Yeah, to answer your question, we had the students returned. We didn't need to have this plan in place to be able to support them. But we do feel that this plan would greatly benefit the 56 students that we presently have here.
All right, thank you.
I have a quick question. Are there any opportunities to tie the ASL classes in New Britain High in with like the rising educators? Because maybe it could spark some of the students' interest into becoming teachers for deaf or hard of hearing children. And also with early childhood, there's a lot of early childhood programs that use sign language in order to enhance the children's language development. So are there any thoughts of tying those in?
I think those are all wonderful ideas. I think the reason for us coming here and presenting this to you is because we're hoping that we're going to spark some excitement, and be able to collaborate on some additional ideas on how to, expand what we want to do here. So we would be open to having discussion about those things.
And can I just add to that? All the more reason to have that community of learners in one site, right? Support for the families, but also for our educator rising students who have an interest in this, to go into a building that was built specific to the needs of the deaf and hearing impaired community. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
I don't have a question, but comment. In October of this year, the State Board of Ed approved ASL as a certification, which is a step that, as a certification for world language. And it is designated in the shortage area list within world language. So, for example, I know of universities already planning and starting the program, and people have applied for the coming year to become a certified teacher of ASL, like as a foreign or world language, and not as a teacher of the, of the deaf. And so, it may take a little while, but I think the state is on the same page of developing these teachers, and it's something for us to be on the lookout for, and definitely to connect with, like our educators rising, any opportunities to work with students who are deaf or hard of hearing, because as they become educators, that's one type of educator that they can now become.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Kelly.
Bye-bye.
My son learned sign language in preschool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone would like to take off? Okay. Seeing none, I will, we don't need to do anything, we just continue on to the next, okay.
It's approved since.
It's approved since nobody has raised any objections. We'll move on to new business. And the first item is it discussing a legal settlement, so we need to go into executive session for that, or not?
Motion that we go into executive session for items 5A and 5B.
Yep.
For item 5A, it will be the board, Superintendent Sarah, board attorney, and is that it?
Miss Manning.
And Miss Manning. And for 5B, it'll be the board, Superintendent Sarah, and Mr. Dion.
And Mr. King.
And Mr. Kane.
Okay. So we're doing that across the hall?
Yeah, it needs a second.
Okay, so need a second? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. It is 8:22, and we are back reconvening after executive session.
Motion to approve the 2021 Board of Education grievance hearing calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, so there's a conversation. You want to know?
So,
Yeah.
this was a request by Ms. Manning, because scheduling grievance hearings often ends up being this very difficult process of trying to find enough board members on a given date, et cetera, et cetera. And by adopting this calendar, basically it's going to set up a time for them to be done I think it's each month? Yeah, once per month, where all grievances that are pending, that's the date that they're heard. And that way we avoid the sort of having to address them as they come up.
What does that do to the contract, though?
I was just.
There's
gonna
pretty
say,
strong contract
I
language.
actually believe it's contractual, but we haven't been following it, right? We have been being more flexible in terms of that whole date thing for them.
So there are timelines in the various union contracts that require it. I believe Ms. Manning, was this brought to all the unions and they said this calendar would be acceptable?
That was my next question.
This was actually a past practice. I don't know if I apologize, I couldn't hear you initially. Several years ago, that the district happened to just move away from. So this was a past practice that the unions were familiar with and were amenable to and were used to, for lack of a better phrase. So we felt like moving back to this format would be just a more easier way to streamline the process, so that it would be easier both for the unions, their representatives, as well as the board to be able to schedule them in a more efficient manner moving forward. So, and also to address the timeline issue, we feel, just as past practice, the notification of such grievances within the timeline would work with the 2-week windows that are, the 1-month window that is provided for notification.
I would definitely want to see this go to the union just for
Yeah,
the.
so did this get discussed with the unions? Did you present it?
This was discussed with, I wouldn't say all members of the union, it was discussed, all union membership rather, it was discussed with the larger ones that we thought would be most impacted, but we can certainly make sure that we've spoken to all of them. If you'd like me to confirm that, I can do that for next time, absolutely.
Okay. And don't forget the parents.
What's that?
She said don't forget the paras.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'll confirm that.
Just to point out, this wouldn't necessarily preclude us from, if there ever was an incident that arose that due to.
True.
Yeah.
This is, you have people, like, you're gonna round robin commit. I have the 14th, Annie has the 14th, you have the 14th. Like, assign it that way you have to have that. It's almost like another committee meeting. You're right. Didn't even think of that. You could do that. Perfect, though. I'm good.
Okay, so any other questions or comments?
Consideration.
Any other questions or comments on this?
Yeah, as long as I know that we word it correctly, like, this is the calendar, but we are open to other meetings.
Okay.
We don't want to have more time.
All right.
Can you call it tentative? That's what
Well,
we
we
used
Maybe
to
call
do.
it, maybe call it tentative,
That's what
you
we
know.
used to do, yeah.
What if you named it, scheduled?
Kristen, what was it named in the past?
I think it was tentative, wasn't it?
Grievance hearing calendar, and then a note somewhere that just says,
Other-
star, additional days can be added as,
If necessary.
If
But
necessary.
the idea is to have this as a understood thing that people could predict on and schedule for.
yeah.
Okay? Is everybody clear on that? Is everybody okay with approving this? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Let's move on to the next thing, and of course, I don't have my agenda in front of me.
Motion to approve revised policy 6141, curriculum development.
Second.
Okay, you have a second?
This is the first read.
Yeah, this is a first reading. I just wanted to take a quick moment to do a shout out to Ms. Salerni. You can see she included both the red line version as well as the clean version. And you can see from just the amount of red lines, there was a lot of revision and changes to this. The section that shows up kind of on the second page, which is the curriculum approval and review process, is entirely new. So please take the time to look that over before the next meeting, and if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to any member of the policy committee.
Okay.
So making a motion for a second read.
Yeah, I'd motion to postpone this to our January meeting.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, personnel. Approve new job description and new position request for 2.0 managers of partnership programs for partnership office.
Second.
Any questions?
Questions, discussion? Come on.
No, I will say, the email that you sent with the very, very old org chart probably needs to be updated. Because it didn't help me at all.
And I have Sandra on the call if you'd like to.
I don't have anything off the top of my head.
Okay.
Just felt like saying it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Oh, motion to adjourn? Is that the last day?
Hopefully there's nothing else.
I'd like to just ask, we have not yet dealt with the superintendent's evaluation. We felt that we're gonna do that at our next meeting.
January? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 'cause-
I didn't have any feedback, but.
yeah, I don't think,
It
everybody,
looked okay. I mean,
I did send the draft from our
I didn't have any
conversations out to
questions.
the full
Okay, go
board. I did hear back from Mr. Lister, thank you very much for emailing back. If any other board members have comments, or even if there's no comment and you're like, it's good, let me know, because once I hear that back, I will, if there's not any substantive changes, I'll send
Okay.
it on to Superintendent Sarah so she can review it before we meet with her to discuss as a board at our next meeting.
yep,
Okay.
okay.
Now a motion to adjourn.
Yes, please.
Yep,
This,
okay.
I know we're adjourned.
Okay.
I really want to point this out, the partnership office. You know, it always amazes me when you work so hard, it only comes to like 3 or 4 pages. You know, you expect it to be like, the yellow pages, but, we worked really hard at putting this together for our families. It's electronic, but we have some hard copies also available in multiple languages. So, for our families, just
That's
especially
great.
now, but it's really hard to get all these community people together and figure out who's doing what or draw that map.
Mm.
Do you have one of these in Spanish on you?
I don't. I only have the English, but I can get it for you.
I would appreciate it, thank
Okay,
you.
Martha.
This would be good in a, like an applet type of thing. You know what I mean, Matt?
Like
What
a
does that
what?
mean, Matt?
Yeah.
For all of our FSLs, for all of our, you know what I mean?
This is really good.
Okay, Sandra's texting me now, so I'm just gonna tell her to text everyone,
I
or
posted
not
the
text,
digital
email.
version on my
So Sandra, if we
public
can
page
email the
for-
Spanish, tomorrow, and then,
Yes, we were,
oh, good.
yes, the Spanish and the Arabic we are working on. It's mostly the headings, but the goal is to get them out tomorrow so we can participate in the farmers to families and ensure that whenever we have a resource drop off, all of our social workers have it, it's put on the website, that we can share this as quickly as possible. And we worked with the youth organization, Mallory Dupre had her eyes on it as well. We had a couple people make some edits, so it's a live document online. So it periodically we'll be printing it out and sharing it with everyone in all 3 languages.
I would just say between Matt and Paul and somebody, you could make this like a mobile version.
A what?
It's a mobile version for your phone, right?
Oh.
Like, hey, I'm
Like
really
an
looking
app.
for, I need help after school programming that's near, I don't know, East Street. Oh, you could go to Paradigm Academy. You know,
Yeah.
instead of, who carries around paper?
Agreed, we made it for some of us who are over 50.
That's right. Who still uses
So not our
paper?
parents. So not our parents.
Right.
Yeah.
You young people not gonna be using it anyway.
I know, just gonna say, do you want me to put in a Rolodex for you? And
I have one. No, I don't.
I still have an address
Now, we
book.
can do that, right?
Yeah. See here, we
Yes,
officially adjourned.
we're officially
yes,
adjourned.
we are officially adjourned.